Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for taking some time out of your busy hockey schedule, as Matt has done so for us here tonight. Flyers hat on top of the head as well. And we just had a goal scored and telling me a little bit about a prospect that I know nothing about because I'm not a hockey guy. At heart, I kind of like hockey, I'll be honest with you. But Matt and I discussed this with him before. I was a Penguins fan. He told me that that's not okay. So I get it. I understand. But
could be worse. Could be a Rangers fan.
That is worse than I've heard. So, yeah, I definitely don't really like things New York related, if that makes sense. So,
good with that. I'm good with that.
Yeah, whatever, It is that time of year, though, where it seems like that we've got a few New York teams doing some stuff, like in baseball, particularly the Mets and the Yankees. You don't say that very often, those two teams together, right? But they're both in the postseason, so thank God we don't cover New York sports, because I have a feeling that we'd be a little bit more miserable.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think just living on the East Coast in general, we'd be miserable.
Oh God, yeah. So the traffic and the potholes, those two things alone, I think would drive me crazy. But anyway, enough with the long intro here. I am Nick of N2 Media, and that is Matt of Evans Rankings. You might have heard of us, you might not have, but we are the co-hosts for the Pick Six high school football show here in the state of Washington. We didn't have a chance to get at you last week. Both Matt and I had some busy schedules and things that we needed to tend to, so I hope you didn't miss us too much. I did get at least one direct message last week, Matt, that said that our services are very appreciated. So definitely give a shout out to all those who do watch and contribute. We do have a live stream comment section. We do encourage that you type things in that probably aren't rated R related, although that has happened in the past. So.
Yes. Yeah.
I bet there were a lot of rated R things that were said, though, over this last weekend by some coaches, some fan bases around the state, Matt, because there were a couple games that, two in particular, that really caught my eye, other than the one that I was actually watching three-dimensionally. But last week, you had the big showdown in 2A between Anacortes and Archbishop Murphy, where Archbishop Murphy holds on and wins 34-28 over the defending champions of Anacortes. And then you had like the absolute gut wrencher between Eastside Catholic and Roosevelt, to where Roosevelt is like ready to cement themselves on the map, right? And they're up by, 19, I think, with 3:33 left.
Yep.
And Eastside Catholic somehow pulls a rabbit out of the hat and wins the game by 1 point to upset Roosevelt in that Metro League game that, it's going to probably come down to third place now for Roosevelt. That's probably what their ceiling is looking like, just based on, I don't see O'Day losing a game to anybody in league, and I think that Eastside Catholic will take care of the rest of their business as well. But what I wanted to start the show out with, Matt, was that game real quick, right? Even though I didn't watch it, I want to get your opinion at least, because that's all that we are here to really provide is our opinion. Even though Roosevelt lost the game, is that a win in your book for Roosevelt as a program?
I think, yeah, as a program, it's definitely we were expecting them to be in that second tier right there, second, third, fourth in the Metro League, but being able to, obviously a loss is a loss, but I think that for just as an optics stake, I think that loss isn't going to hurt them as much in seeding as it could have, if it would have been, 10, 15, 20 points. I think they're going to be kicking themselves knowing that a win would probably have boosted them up into the top 4, maybe top 5, top 6. But I still think that they're a pretty solid top 8 team. Maybe, it's going to be, we're going to see how they going down the rest of the season. And it's going to come down to what they can do the next couple weeks. They've got a couple more weeks to be able to prove where they should be. And I think that I think it was an absolutely great effort for them. And kudos to Eastside Catholic for not giving up. When you're down 19 with 3 something to go, it's very easy to just pack it up and look for the next week. But those boys kept fighting and got that very important W.
Yeah, this game kind of didn't have the magnitude of a state championship game, but I'm reminded of back when a team from the Mid-Columbia Conference by the name of Chiawana was in a state championship game taking on Camas, and they were down big in that game, and everything started to go their way in the second half. Onside kicks were recovered, and before you know it, Chiawana won their first state championship. It takes steps to get there. Sometimes it takes luck as well. Eastside Catholic's been on that side of the coin as well. I believe in another state championship game, they were playing, I want to say, Bellevue, and they ended up erasing a very large deficit and coming back. So, I mean, they're not prone to playing to the final whistle, the Eastside Catholic, that is. And I think it's a better loss for Roosevelt than it is comeback win for Eastside Catholic. I know it's hard maybe to quantify that, honestly, just because you're talking about a team winning and a team losing, right? And there are going to be some implications to it. But I think that Roosevelt probably earned a little bit more respect in the regard that, they knew they had the game, in the bag, but unfortunately you got to play all 48 minutes in high school sports and you got to seal the deal if possible. But I think that they earned the respect of their peers. I mean, Eastside Catholic's not going to go into a second meeting with them, taking them lightly. And I think that Roosevelt's going to use that game as a lot of motivation. And I don't think that there's a lot of teams that they're going to possibly match up with to where they might have to make a long trip to travel to. I'm thinking in my head, though, Matt, I mean, it could come down to, say like a 2-7 matchup where Roosevelt's a 7 and they might have a quarterfinal game going to take on like a Kennewick. That could be a scenario to where that game could end up biting them. But if they're fortunate enough to not have to, travel long distance, I think they'd be fine if they're playing in the greater Seattle area still, no matter who they're taking on.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, we've seen too that the two of their losses have been really tight games. They lost to Camas week 1 where they had a chance to win it there at the end. And, this lost to Eastside Catholic. So, I mean, if you're going to have a couple of losses, those are 2 really good ones to have.
Yeah, I think that my money would be on them for being the best 2-loss team in 3A, maybe even the state, pound for pound. Although you do kind of got, a couple teams thrown into that mix. Technically, Lake Stevens is one of those teams with 2 losses, different classification. But I'm not looking at Roosevelt as a team that I want to match up with if I'm in 3A. Especially if I'm Eastside Catholic, especially if I'm O'Day. I do believe that those 2 teams still lock horns here. I don't know if it's this week or the following between O'Day and Roosevelt. But
that's next week. It could be a huge one.
I mean, they could easily throw themselves into the mix with an upset win over O'Day, and you could have yourself the good old-fashioned 3-way tie. But it looks like this week that Roosevelt has Rainier Beach, and then they'll follow it up with O'Day. And the thing this year is, once again, I'm not sure if you can help me out, but typically in the past, Metro League hasn't played a Week 9 game. Are they doing that this year?
I don't have confirmation, but I do believe that the top, I can't remember if it's the top 3 or top 4 are going to get buys in Week 9. But like I said, no confirmation yet. But as soon as I know, I'll share that on Twitter.
Excellent. Yeah, Matt and I are busy trying to figure out everything that we can to do with playoffs because there are a lot of moving parts as we have learned so far over just the last couple of days or even the last 48 hours. Things are in the works in terms of trying to iron out where all the bids are going to go, how the bids are going to be determined, from each league and from each district. Real quick before I jump into that. We're going to do rankings again at the end, like we always do. That Archbishop Murphy and Anacortes game, you got to look at that as if you just won the state championship in your mind. And if you're Archbishop Murphy, you're playing the team that arguably nobody other than Linden has come close to in the last season and a half, almost 2 seasons. And now you've got a situation where Archbishop's got to turn around after such an emotional home win, right? They had the King 5 News crew up there with Chris Egan in that game. Now they got to go turn around and they got to play Linden this weekend here. Tough game to have to follow up on the heels of such a thrilling victory if you're Archbishop Murphy. But they're looking to get back to the Archbishop Murphy that was causing teams to forfeit just roughly a decade ago. But there's not going to be any quit in the Anacortes Seahawks. I wanted to get your perception here on this game. Who do you think will have a better chance for the remainder of the season? Do you think it's Archbishop getting the confidence, knowing that they can beat the number one team in the state? Or do you think it's Anacortes knowing that they're not invincible and they've tasted defeat again and they don't want to taste it again?
I think ultimately, I would give a slight edge to Anacortes in that, because of the sense that, when you do win, it can kind of cover up some of the flaws that you may have. And this is going to be a time where they can reevaluate and just go, okay, where can we get better? What were our mistakes? It's that whole growth mindset thing that we talk about in education all the time. Like you learn from your mistakes. Your mistakes aren't necessarily a bad thing. These are the things that help you show what you need to work on. And it's something I harp on ever since I've gotten into education 7 years ago. We celebrate the wins, but we celebrate the losses in the sense that we learn from them and we get better from them and we grow. So while Archbishop Murphy's going to come out of it with the win and the confidence, I think at the end of the day, this is going to be a huge benefit to Anacortes. In fact, I want to say Coach Ports tweeted out something this afternoon that was saying something very similar to that, of like, hey, this is the thing that we're going to take this and we're going to make it, it's going to make us better. And I retweeted it and just 100% agree with that. It's just, it's, the losses can be devastating, but if you use them to your advantage and be able to fix what needs to be fixed, then it can be very beneficial to you.
I think this is a great game for the 2A class in general. The result, I think, is it makes the 2A playoff bracket just a little bit more interesting, right? Because, we were both, I think, fair to say, at least I was. I'll speak for myself on this one. I wasn't really considering the possibility of any other teams besides Tumwater and Anacortes playing for the championship. So I think Archbishop kind of did everybody a favor. I think in that class, all of a sudden now you might have a confidence boost if you're a Franklin Pierce. You might have a confidence boost if you're a WF West, who still plays Tumwater, by the way. So there's going to be a good measuring stick right there between those two teams in league. That will take place here in a couple of weeks. So I agree with you, though. I do think long-term, throughout the rest of the year, I think that it's a good refocusing tool for Anacortes. And since they're still playing a sophomore quarterback who's taken over for Rex Larson from last year, it's a good growing opportunity for a young guy who's got experienced guys on the outside, experienced running backs in Brock and Brady Beaner. So, it's a good refocusing tool. I think Anacortes is going to really benefit from having the loss. I mean, obviously you don't want to lose games, right? That's the theme of playing sports, right? But like you said, you celebrate the opportunity to get better, to dissect a loss. How can I come back better, the next time? I've coached a couple seasons now for basketball and baseball. I mean, youngsters as well, but ultimately losing helps shape, who you're going to become in the future, and how you can work on your craft. And then it identifies the things that you need to improve on. So I like that mentality. I think it's also a win for Archbishop. I know I'm going to give a car to everybody here like Oprah, but a win like that, when you're at home and you've got the pressure of the atmosphere being built up, you've got the defending champs coming in who, hasn't really had, too close of a game in quite some time, unless you count the Linden 14-point, game that they recently had, or last year's Linden game. I mean, those would be the two closest that they've played, but it showed that they can withstand the pressure of delivering in the big moments. And, those are things that they're going to draw upon when it gets to the state tournament.
100%.
It's been a while, Matt, since we've done a show. Richland, oh man. I wanted to talk about the Bombers real quick because one of your biggest concerns about the Bombers was the competition that they've played.
Yep.
I think they've passed the test on the competition. I think that, I remember a couple of shows ago, like I think the last one that we did, it was the Richland against Kennewick. Mm-hmm. And you were saying to yourself that if this is a lower scoring game, that it favors Kennewick. Well, it was a close, low scoring game. And it did favor the Lions by 14-13. And then Richland comes all the way over here 4 hours away to go take on Skyview, and Skyview with tremendous heavy hearts, and very sad to hear about the passing of one of their student athletes who was honored before the game. So a very emotional setting for the Skyview Storm, and you got to give your hat to Skyview that day. But I'm impressed by what Richland has done in the last 2 weeks, even losing a couple of games.
Yeah, I agree. They came out and they showed that while they didn't get the wins, they're right there. They're just a couple plays away from, being unbeaten and, being in the conversation for a very top seed. They do have a couple of really, really tough ones coming up. They play Walla Walla this week. That one shouldn't be too tough, unfortunately. But, they end with Chiawan and Kamayakan week 8 and week 9. And right there, it's that. I mean, right there's your MCC 1, 2, 3. Are you going to get a direct spot to week 10? Or are you going to have to go crossover with GSL? It's going to be put up or shut up time right there for all 3 of those teams.
Sure. Yeah, I'm encouraged by what Richland's been able to do, and if they have their offense dialed the way that they normally are capable of having it, I think that their defense has shown the ability to keep them in games against really good teams. I think it's a really encouraging sign for them. Staying with that same game, I think it's an encouraging sign for Skyview to get the starting quarterback back in the lineup there to free up Gavin Packer, who came up with the game-winning catch, as it seems like we always talk about. That guy's just an absolute monster on the outside down here for Skyview. And now Skyview gets a chance to refocus a little bit. They were feeling kind of down on themselves after losing 2 straight, losing to West Lynn, in spectacular fashion, and then also losing to Decatur the week prior, I guess week after, last week for us. It's good. It's a good refocusing win for them because they've got league play starting now this week, and they're going to have to go through Union, Camas, and Battlegrounds over the next 3 weeks to decide their season. Obviously, the big game that they're looking at is the one against Camas, who continues to just impress me. They go on the road and they beat Coeur d'Alene. They go on the road, they beat Monroe 42-14. So Skyview's got their work cut out from down here, and Camas is still continuing to do Camas things. Also, I wanted to get your feedback on Moses Lake. Moses Lake winning very big, 69-20 against Post Falls of Idaho. Is that the same Post Falls team that just played Battleground to a 40-point win?
Yep, that is. Yeah. Yeah. Moses Lake is they're proving that they are the cream of the Big 9 crop right now. They are definitely the best team in that North Central Washington area for 4A, and they're going to be. I mean, they've been a tough out the last few years, and it's going to be interesting to see it's going to be interesting to see the respect that the Big 9 gets. They don't have 2 really good teams this year as they had in years past. They just have the one, but it'll be interesting to see how how the seeding committee takes a look at that team.
Yeah, it looks like the next team that's in line in the Big 9 is Eastmont, and Eastmont's currently at 5-1, and those 2 teams will lock up this weekend. So a good measuring stick for those 2 teams to kind of see where they're at in terms of competition on the field. And if Eastmont's able to get a win, that could actually help a little bit of the perception of the league when it comes time for seeding. But Moses Lake's only lost that 1 game to Rigby of Idaho, and they've reeled off 5 straight. That game was the first of the season. They've constantly gotten better each week, and I was pretty impressed by that win over Post Falls just based on score alone.
Yeah, it was. Post Falls isn't a slouchy team either. They're probably. I mean, there's not a lot of teams in Idaho in the top division, but they're probably in the top half of that. It's not a. I mean, Rigby's probably number 1. Coeur d'Alene's up there, and yeah, I mean, Post Falls is a pretty solid team.
Moving on, one more team here real quick. Franklin Pierce out of the 2A classification. The Cardinals are not a secret to anybody anymore. If you look at the games that they've played over the last couple of weeks, just this last Friday, they played Stillicum, and Stillicum only had 1 loss going into that game at 4-1, and they end up beating them 44-7. They also played Ording, and they beat Ording a couple weeks ago 36-8. They just played Eatonville, who was undefeated at the time, and they beat Eatonville 50-0. And now they're going to take on Fife, who's kind of the last remaining competitive team out of the 2A SPSL. But the Cardinals are running the football out of the Power T formation for an astounding 400 yards per game. I don't know what to make about that style when it comes to playing like a Tumwater, an Anacortes, a Linden, even a Seaholm, right? An Archbishop, those types of teams. I don't know how that's going to equate if you're not super diverse, but I'll tell you this much, Matt. I love a team that runs the football like this, especially in November and December, because historically in those months, the weather is pretty bad up here in the state of Washington. And the teams that can win in the trenches and be the most physical are usually the teams that advance in the postseason.
Yeah, 100% agreed. Franklin Pierce is showing that. I mean, they're really perfecting their craft up there. And I think right now, if they can, let's say they get past 5 this week, I would not be surprised to see them get a top 4 seed. In all honesty, I mean, the way they're playing, the schedule that they've played, how strong the SPSL 2A is, I would not be surprised to see them get a top 4 seed. And like you said, I'm the same way. I love watching a team that can just eat up the clock and just ground and just pound and all that stuff. I think that this style of offense, while yes, it's it's going to be easier to be able to put numbers in the box to try to stop it. Nobody's done it so far. So, until somebody can, there's no betting against Franklin Pierce right now.
Well, I'll take it just a step further. The defense is looking just as solid as the offense as well, holding a high-powered Ording Cardinals team in the Battle of the Cardinals, by the way, to 8 points in that ball game. Very, very impressive. I think that they are a team that's going to be very difficult to figure out in a 48-minute game. Yeah, I could see a team maybe figuring it out by halftime, but what will the score be at that point? It's going to be a battle of adjustments playing Franklin Pierce. I'll tell you that much. I look forward to the possibility of them playing a team like Tumwater, like Othello, teams that like to run the football right back at you, and see which team can come up with more explosive plays and more stops. I think that would be a treat of a ball game. Jake's typed in Kalama losing to Seton Catholic was a surprise. Yeah, not surprised. No. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Unfortunately, Aiden Brown, the starting quarterback for Kalama, exited the game in the first quarter, and then the backup quarterback, I believe Henry Sigvardsson, also had to exit the game with an injury. So Kalama was faced with the third string quarterback throughout most of that ball game. Jake, I love you. I appreciate you watching, and Kalama's had a great run so far, but Kalama's going to kind of have to pick up the pieces a little bit here and see if they can get some guys healthy and get back to work.
I have some news as well. I got word today that Columbia White Salmon's forfeiting the game against Kalama this weekend. So that should be good for them to be able to get a week of rest to get some of those guys back. I don't know if they want to look for a game, but I do have some feelers out there to see if they are interested. So I'll be reaching out to some people at Kalama to see if they would like a game, if we can find one for them.
All right. Well, for all those Kalama fans, I know there's a couple. I will give 50-1 odds right now that game will not be picked up if Matt finds an opponent. Yeah, I found guys. I got one right here. Yeah, I don't think so. Unless you guys got some inside betting going on here and you want to make some money on the side, we'll figure it out. But I got a feeling that Kalama is going to use that opportunity as a good bye week, a chance to pick up a forfeit win in the standings, keep everybody as healthy as possible because they've got two big games still. They play La Center and then they play Castle Rock. And I'll be up on the hill streaming that game against La Center. I'm really interested to see how the Wildcats look in person. And I'll be interested to see if Kalama is able to field the team that I know that they have and the team that they can be when they are all out there and they are healthy. Because when Aiden Brown was in the game, they scored on the opening drive. So I mean they're a team that's going to compete with just about anybody. And so I'm not writing them off, but they're going to need to get healthy. And other than that, it was a great last week of football down in this area. Ridgefield and Mark Morris had a good game. I had a chance to do that game. And, Ridgefield had a 17-12 lead going into the fourth quarter, and just turnovers ultimately were the difference maker in that one. Ridgefield still undefeated at 6-0, and I found out that's a good transition here because that's Greater St. Helens League 2A. By the way, we do have the live stream comment section going, so if you have anything that you could post in the comment section, that would be super helpful because Matt and I are still trying to dissect everything that's going on with playoffs. So I do have an update. I shared it with Matt the other day, but I did get one of the athletic directors to send me out some information here that was pertinent. And I looked into it because I was watching the scrimmage from the Grays Harbor guys, Daniel and Justin. And they were talking about how the Aberdeen coach was giving some information to him that they looked like that they were going to be playing a crossover game against the Greater St. Helens League in some capacity. And so it got me thinking, and I contacted a source. And I did get a sheet that states that for the next 4 years, the Greater St. Helens League 2A and the EVCO 2A are going to rotate bids, and there will be a one game, like pigtail game, essentially like they do for basketball. It's not a full game. It's going to be 2 12-minute halves, and it's going to take place on Tuesday, November the 5th. So in even years, it's going to be hosted by the EVCO number 3, and then the Greater St. Helens 5 will go on the road to play that game. In the odd years, it'll be the Greater St. Helens League 4 hosting the EVCO 4. And so that's going to alternate until we get to the next reclassification cycle. But there will be some form of a crossover game. Other than that, the top 4 from Greater St. Helens are automatically into the round of 32. The top 2 from EVCO are automatically into the round of 32 for this season. So I hope that clears something up. The Aberdeen coach would be correct. If they were in the 3 spot, they would host the Greater St. Helens 5.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I know that from the what I've heard, after the original reading, there was an appeal from a couple leagues over here in Central Washington, basically just about like I think it was like the tiebreakers or whatnot, and how they're in breaking a tie for berths or whatnot. They wanted to. I can't remember exactly what the whole thing was. Luke Thompson from the Yakima Herald Republic wrote a great article about it. I also heard that there was an appeal to that appeal. I haven't heard yet about that. Like I said, I do have my feelers out. I'm still waiting to hear back from some folks, but I'm hoping. But the goal, from what I've heard, is that everybody should have information by the end of this week. And so, as soon as I hear something, I'll be tweeting it out. I'll be writing about it, and we'll make sure that everybody's on board and up to date and up to speed. Because I mean, I'm not going to lie, it's kind of ridiculous that we're at week 7 and we have no idea what. Who's getting into the playoffs, how many are getting in. I like that we're doing this format, but I think this is something that we could have maybe tried to have an idea about beforehand and then maybe shifted. But yeah, I don't know. That's just one guy's opinion.
Yeah. I think that we should be tagged in every tweet that or X or whatever that goes out over the next 2 weeks, just so we can make sure that we can kind of get a feel for all of this information, decipher it, put it together. I know that that's essentially what you do at Evans Rankings. Is I know that you will have a great time with a Google spreadsheet and an algorithm.
Already do.
Exactly. To get all of this kind of figured out here. Week 10 football, super excited about it. Figuring out who's playing in week 10 and how they're going to decide it's happening. Not so exciting, but it's kind of exciting still in a nerdy type of way. So Coach Brian Levesky's on YouTube commenting, says Seton Catholic at La Center, Camas at Skyview, Ridgefield at Woodland. Too bad Evergreen versus Kelso wasn't week 9. Yeah, I have a feeling that since there's only 2 spots in that Greater St. Helens League 3A league, Evergreen plays at Prairie this week. I put Evergreen on upset alert here. That Greater St. Helens League 3A is definitely always wonky. There's usually a tiebreaker game that needs to happen, a Kansas City tiebreaker. They had to do one last year. Would not be shocked at all if you're going to have 2 teams have a tiebreaker this year, a second and third place team. But Prairie can really screw some things up in that regard if they beat Evergreen coming up this week. But yeah, week 9, totally loaded. I mean, like I said, throw in that Kalama Castle Rock game. That's going to be huge because there's 4 teams that are going to go in from the Trico as well. And Kingsway Christian's not out of it yet either at 4-2. So there's going to be some stuff decided. And that Mark Morris RA Long game coming up in week 9. I know that a lot of people are like, that's a basketball rivalry. Yes, it definitely is. But this year, that game could decide a playoff spot. You know, Columbia River's coming on late in Greater St. Helens League 2A, and you know Washougal's coming to town this week at 3-3 playing RA Long, and there's a lot to be decided, and I'm excited to see it all play out on the field. I'm trying to think about some other races that are going on that are pretty tight right now, and I guess I'm drawn to the Wesco currently in my head, and technically the Northwest 2A. Anything could happen there still. Linden could end up beating Archbishop this weekend and have a 3-way tie for first place up there in that league. You know, the Wesco, you got Arlington undefeated. You got Glacier Peak at 5-1. You got Lake Stevens at 4-2, but all those teams are undefeated in the league still. So a lot of things can happen, Matt.
Yeah, over here you've got week 9. You've got Richland and Kamiakin, which got bumped up to Halloween night because of that potential third place team going to play against the GSL. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great football, and speaking of all those games you mentioned there, Brian, you know, with La Center and Skyview and Woodland and all those guys, wouldn't it be great if all those games were on Saturday and they were at the same venue? You could just go have just an awesome day of great football. That'd be so cool. I'd love that. It'll never happen, but I'd love that.
Well, McKenzie is the closest thing to that down there in Vancouver, McKenzie Stadium, because currently that houses Evergreen, Mountain View, and Heritage. So those 3 teams are always revolving. Kiggins Bowl also a contender down there where Skyview plays and Hudson's Bay plays, and amongst others have played there as well by the Fort Vancouvers. But yeah, a lot of stuff going on. Isn't Woodland undefeated in conference play? They are. Yes, they are. Thank you for asking. Yeah, they just dusted RA Long this last week, 40-0, and Woodland does still play a road game at Mark Morris, which stylistically could be a very competitive game. I would not be surprised to see that game within one score. But Woodland and Ridgefield, they played for the championship last season, and it was at Ridgefield. And I know that the Spunners are itching for the chance to return the favor to the Beavers. This year is going to be played at the Beavers Den in Woodland on week 10. So that's going to be a good one for sure. What else are you looking at there, Matt?
I'm looking at Greater Spokane League, and I'm trying to find where I had that. I just lost it. Let's see, who does Gonzaga Prep play that week? Let's see, Gonzaga Prep week 9.
They might have Meade.
No, they've got Meade. They got University that week. No, the next 2 games they've got Meade and Central Valley. So that okay. Meade game will be your GSL 1 game over there, and CWAC. You've got Prosser Othello this week. There's so many great games. I was looking through this week to kind of see, maybe if I could pick out what our pick 6 were going to be, but man, there are just so many great games. You go like Arlington Glacier Peak. You're looking at, Chiawana Kennewick. You've got, see who else on here. Eastmont Moses Lake you mentioned. You go down. I mean, there's just Lincoln and Bellarmine. There's so many great games this week.
Yeah. The game that just happened this last week in the Greater Spokane League for 2A was the one that I was really looking at with Clarkston and West Valley of Spokane. And I just want to point out real quick, right? I don't know how many viewers that we get from east of where Matt is at in the Tri-Cities, right? I'm assuming there's a couple, right? But the big cloud here is what's coming out of the Greater Spokane League this year in terms of competition versus everybody else in the central part of the state and the western side of the state. You got Meade, you got Gonzaga Prep, you've got West Valley of Spokane. I think that it's fair to say that the pundits and the media over on that side of the mountain are all in on those teams because judging by where the media polls have got them, I know they're not getting those votes from everybody over here on the west side of the Cascade. So obviously there's something that they're in on, right, that they know that we maybe don't know. I'm not going to sit here and say that they're not any good. but it's just a big unknown for me. You could have teams that are going to set the state tournament on fire, Matt, and is it something that comes out of nowhere? I don't think so, because I've seen this before with Gonzaga Prep going on runs before in state tournaments.
Yeah, and the biggest thing right now with Gonzaga Prep is they, in all honesty, I don't really think you can. I mean, they just played Ridgeline, but other than that, their strength of schedule is really low from who they've played so far. They've only got like a 333, I think, as the strength of schedule. Their big games are coming up with CV this week and Meade next week, so we'll get a really good. I mean, they are really good, but I think this will be the stretch that kind of solidifies how good they actually are in the eyes of the seating committee and in the eyes of everybody who's going to be watching.
Yeah, I mean, the only other team that I can really think of in the other side for the 2As is Deer Park being 4-2, and they're the next opponent here for West Valley of Spokane. So the last chance for the Eagles of West Valley to kind of make their impressions on seating committees before heading into week 10. And I'm real interested to see where everybody thinks that West Valley should be at. And would you put them as a top 5 team if they go undefeated, if they're 9-0, knowing that on this side we've seen in person or on NFHS, we've seen Anacortes, we've seen Archbishop, we've seen Tumwater, we've seen Franklin Pierce,
I wouldn't, to be honest with you, even as an undefeated, a top 5. I mean, you're saying that. I mean, I could probably name 6 or 7, maybe even 8 teams that I think are better. I mean, in 2A, I think that obviously as an undefeated league champion, you get a little bit of a boost. But I think that if you're just looking just straight at resumes, I think that they could. I mean, I would probably peg them at like a 7 or an 8 right now.
Yeah, well, I was pretty confident in Woodland last year, but they played Clarkson and got absolutely obliterated in the round of 16. I figured it would be a lot closer than what it was. I think it was an 8-9 matchup, something like that, and Clarkson was the 8 seed, or might have been a 7-10. Either way, Woodland had to make the trip, and yeah, they were kind of manhandled by the Bantams, the fighting chickens. But yeah, no, I'm real curious to see how it goes. I mean, maybe Deer Park throws a wrench into the whole equation for them anyway and wins the game. But there's definitely going to be some teams from the Greater Spokane who are in the tournament. That is for sure. What to expect from them, I really don't know. I would expect a football game. That's about where I'm at right now, which isn't much. Joey or Coey Jupes says people really live there. Apparently, I've heard. I actually UFC women's what is it, bantamweight or strawweight champion Juliana Pena is from Spokane. So there we go. Anyway, Matt, anything else that you can think of on playoff allocations that is worth bearing news on right now, or are we just going to kind of back burner that?
I did get an update from a source in the 2B Bi-County about their bids. 2B Bi-County D6 is getting 4 bids. The top 3 are getting buys directly into the state tournament, and then the fourth seed from the top tier is going to play the 1 seed from the bottom tier, which more than likely is going to be Colfax, and the winner of that one will be the 4th seed to state.
I don't know if there's a league that I think is tougher right now than that 2B Bi-County league for the upper half, at least.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, everybody from the Northwest Conference is going to sit here and homer on them and say, "Oh no, we're definitely the toughest." I mean, look at who you have to play. All these teams have winning records. And yeah, I mean, Asotin, Northwest Christian, Freeman, just those 3 teams right there off the bat. And Newport's having a decent season so far at 3-3. Cheweela's 3-2. Lynn Britsville Sprague's 3-3, and Lynn Britsville Sprague's just a few years removed from a deep run. Reardon 2-4. I mean, that's as tough as a league as there is around the state, especially for 2B. I'll say that.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the additions of Freeman and Newport this year, it just even elevated them higher than where they were. I mean, they were great as it was, but to bring in those, sorry, just saw an article pop up. I'm gonna have to read it here in just a second.
Yeah, you're good.
But Yeah, just to see, adding a powerhouse like Freeman and then a team like Newport that's kind of on the rise. It's just bolstered that league even better.
Yeah, no, I was also kind of curious to see about how many bids maybe might come out of the 2B EWAC West and the EWAC East, with LaSalle being 6-0 currently, Clay Ellum Roslyn at 5-1, and that's a league worth keeping your eye on in
Well, I
terms
can
of
tell you that
competition.
one too. They are getting 7 to state District 5, and what they're doing is, I believe that the EWAC is sending 9 to their crossovers with it's either 9 or 10 they're sending over to their crossovers with the Central Washington that has Liberty Bell, Okanagan, and those guys. And they'll be doing straight winner to state, loser out games. I don't believe there are any protected games. I don't think that the EWAC one is going to take on the Central Washington one, but yeah, they're going to be doing straight winner to state, loser outs between the EWAC and the Central Washington.
Good stuff. I wanted to touch a little bit on the CWAC, for 2A. Othello at 6-0, they're going to take on Prosser coming up this week, and Prosser's at 3-3. You also still have Toppenish at 4-2. They've lost a couple times over the last few weeks. East Valley still hovered around there at 4-2. What can you tell me on projections there from the 2A CWAC? Are we looking at 3 or 4 bids? Because with the amount of teams that they've got, it looks like a 4 bid, maybe even a 5 bid league.
I believe that the CWAC is getting 3, and the Greater Spokane is getting 3 as well. They are getting they're right now they have down on the allocations that D5 would get 2 to state in a 16 team, and D6 would get 1. I'm assuming that they're going to get 6 combined to week 10, and I think they're going 3-3. So that's going to make that, those last couple games just really important for teams like Prosser and teams like Ephrata that are kind of right there on the cusp.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, Prosser and Othello, they lock up this week, but Prosser ended up going and doing a non-league matchup with Royal, who, by the way, is still illegal. But 52-8, Royal ends up beating Prosser in that matchup, and I don't know, man. I mean, as much as we've tried to talk about teams like Nooksack Valley, Seton Catholic, La Center, it just still looks unfair. Like, I mean, at this point, I think the rest of the league and the rest of the classification needs to petition the WIAA to move Royal up, whether or not they want to or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, seriously.
It's getting kind of unfair. They're looking for their 5th straight championship coming up this year. But hey, don't tell the boys from Seton Catholic, by the way, that that game is over with. They want a shot. They want to play them.
So. I just got confirmation that EWAC 2B is sending 9 to crossovers, and Central Washington 2B sending 5.
Okay. Good deal. Breaking news as it comes in. Well, breaking news to some or breaking news to none, I don't know. You decide. But I put together a pick 6 again here for each classification for our top 6. Do you want to go through a couple lists here and see how we see it heading into this final, I guess, week 7? I guess not final week, but week 7.
Absolutely. I actually went out and did a top 10.
Oh, man, putting me on the spot. Well, I can probably come up with a couple off the top of my head for sure. So, all right, cool. Well, I think that we'll start at the bottom, like Drake, and go to the 1B classification, which, by the way, I tweeted it last week because we weren't having a show, but I kind of wanted to give everybody like just kind of a synopsis, a real brief one. But the 1B Northeast, my God, you got Wilbur Creston and Keller at 6-0. You got Odessa at 5-0. And then you got Almira Cooley and Heartline at 5-1 and Welpinit at 5-1. Jeez Louise, that's 23 games, and you're combined 23-2 as a league.
Yeah, they would split that league 6-6, but I think they kind of looked at it and saw, okay, there's clearly 4 great teams up here. We're just going to kind of give them, we're gonna put all them up there. And the lower tier, I think, has 7 in it, and they, I mean, it's been more competitive games for everybody, but those guys have played the upper tier games, teams in the non-league, so they've been some really interesting games too between those. Curlew in the lower one has a 4-2 record. They've done pretty well. They've hung with a couple of the upper division teams. But yeah, no, there's some good football being played up there with those 4 programs.
Well, I mentioned that league real quick because there's still a lot of undefeated teams in 1B, and I know that Matt loves Nia Bay. I still don't have him in my top 6. I know that they're probably a top 6-ish team, especially when it comes playoffs, but I'm willing to give the nod to everybody who is still undefeated here. So coming in at number 6 from Walla Walla, I got DeSales, and then number 5, Pomeroy. Number 4, Almira, Cooley, and Heartline. Number 3, Wilbur, Creston, and Keller. And I bumped Nacelle up to number 2, and Liberty Christian still holding strong at number 1. But I like that the Comets are doing, and they're doing it in such an easy fashion. I'm not going to say that the competition's not quite as tough over here, but it might not be quite as tough as the teams that you'll find on the eastern side of the state. But I am a believer that Nacelle will have an undefeated season and a strong enough resume to get a very high seed. And I think 2 is where the seeding committee will ultimately end up having them. Whether or not they are the second best team in 1B remains to be seen.
Yeah, I agree with you there. For Mr. Evans's top 10 here, we're going number 10. We're going Welpenant, 9 Entiat, 8 Pomeroy, 7 Odessa, 6 Wilbur, Creston, and Keller, 5 I almost said O'Day, 5 DeSales, 4 Elmira, Cooley, Heartline, 3 Nacelle, 2 Nia Bay, 1 Liberty Christian. I think that the reason why I'm giving Nia Bay the nod right now is because I feel like they've played a tougher schedule overall than Nacelle. Nacelle does have a couple of tough games coming up. I should say tough games. They have a couple of games against winning teams coming up, so that'll help boost their resume.
Yeah, no, I don't have a problem with where everybody's slotted in 1B. I think that as long as we've got Liberty Christian sitting at the top, I think 2 through 7 is very fluid, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how they when as we get to it with the committee there. We do have also week 8. You'll have Liberty Christian and DeSales playing just a couple of blocks away from me up at Hanford here for the for that number 1 seed coming out of the Southeast here, and then they'll have their crossovers as well. But yeah, that's going to be really interesting too, to watch the crossovers between because D6 now is the old D7 and the old D9. So you're going to get they have, what are they getting? They're getting, oh my gosh, they're getting 8 bids. Holy crap. So you're going to get, yeah, exactly. You'll get there's room for those top 4 up in the north, as well as Liberty Christian, DeSales, Pomeroy, Sunnyside Christian, maybe Garfield, Palouse, one of those teams. There's going to be lots of opportunities where in the last few years there were only 3 or 4 bids coming out of there. So yeah, it should be fun.
All right, let's move on to the 2B rankings where they still play 11-man football. How about you start on this one, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go down to number 10. Number 10, I've got the LaSalle Lightning. Number 9, I've got Adna. Number 8, I've got Liberty Bell. 7, Northwest Christian Colbert. 6, Napavine. 5, Freeman. 4, on Alaska. 3, Asotin. 2, Toledo. 1, Okanagan.
I noticed Napavine in that top 5. They're number 5 for you, is what you said?
Number 6.
Number 6. Still, I think that you're right. I do. In terms of them being a top 5 team, I do think that they're a top 5 team.
Yeah.
I don't know if their resume is top 5. I think that, losing to a couple of good 1A schools isn't the biggest killer in the world.
Yep.
And I think that they'll do enough damage in 2B and league. Just got to check on one little thing here that I wanted to verify, because one of those teams that you mentioned there that you have ranked higher than them, I'm trying to see if they've got a head-to-head against them. I know that they're in opposite sides of the league, and I don't think that they have a game against one another, and that's Napavine and Onalaska.
They do not.
Yes. So that's the heavy, other than the Toledo matchup against Onalaska, which is coming up here in week 8. That's the game that you're really circling there if you're in 2B for District 4. I think that's going to determine the hierarchy of seeds. I think Napavine's going to come in below at least one of those teams.
Yep.
I wouldn't be completely, let's say Onalaska wins that game, right? It's in Onalaska. I'd put Onalaska and Toledo each with one loss. Hypothetically, they go 8-1. And hypothetically, Napavine goes 7-2. That's going to be real interesting. I think that stylistic points are going to matter in those Week 10 games that they're in terms of where those teams would be seated if they all three were fortunate enough to get victories. So District 4 2B has got some really good teams. Obviously, I'm with you on Okanagan. I just wrote down my top 6 here, and so my fringe team, my 7th team, was Napavine. So when I went with 6, I went with Northwest Christian Colbert. And then 5, I went with the Freeman Scotties. And 4, I went with the Onalaska Loggers. I was super impressed by their win over Cascade Christian last week. I think they are a team that nobody is going to want to match up with, and that includes Okanagan as well. Toledo, I got at 3. Asotin, I think if I'm going to get on this program, and I'm going to be willing to tell you that I think that the 2B Bi-County is pound for pound the best 2B league right now, I got to put them above Toledo, and I got to put them above Onalaska, because I'd be making a counter to my own argument there. So I got Asotin at 2, 6-0, and then obviously Okanagan, until they get beat, they're probably going to remain number 1 no matter who they play, no matter how many points they win by. Unless the unthinkable happens, I think that they're definitively the best team right now in 2B.
Yep, I completely agree. When you have a 6'6" quarterback, I mean, at this level, it's just yeah. He's
a D1 tight end, by the way.
Exactly. Yeah. Also, Onalaska fans, if you guys haven't heard the update there, Onalaska Winlock is not happening this week. Onalaska is playing Klahowya, 1A Nisqually League.
Yep.
I believe that game's Saturday.
All right, let's move up another classification here to the 1A class. And I'll go ahead and start this one. The big separator game happened this last week between Kashmir and Zilla, and in terms of who was going to get that second spot out of SCA AC. And, Royals definitively the number 1 there. But Kashmir ends up beating Zilla pretty easily there. So I've got Kashmir here at 6 with a 5-1 record. Kalama falling out of the top 6 in my rankings. Then Nooksack Valley at 5 with a 5-1 record. Life Christian, I'm still holding strong at number 4 with undefeated at 5-0. La Center at number 3, 6-0. Seton Catholic at 2 at 6-0, and Royal at number 1, 6-0. It's just unfair right now for the Royal Knights. They are just dusting anything in its path. It doesn't matter what classification it is. I'm not willing to call the fight just yet. I still think that they're going to find themselves in a game. I don't know who's going to be the team to give it to them, but I think it's going to happen still.
Yep, I completely agree with you there. All right, let's go top 10. So number 10, we're going Meridian. Number 9, Linden Christian. Number 8, Kalama. Number 7, Montesano. Number 6, Life Christian Academy. Number 5, Kashmir. Number 4, La Center. Number 3, Seton Catholic. Number 2, Nooksack Valley. Number 1, Royal.
Yeah, I think a lot of respect is going to the Northwest 1A this year with Blaine Meridian, Linden Christian, and then Nooksack Valley, the team that you've got at number 2. If you look at kind of another outside the conference game that happened just this last week, Seaholm really put a beating on Linden Christian. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say I was totally surprised that they won the game. I was a little surprised by what the difference was in the score in that one.
Yeah, I was definitely too. I saw that one pop up on Facebook, and it was just like, oh wow, okay, interesting.
I don't know if everyone can hear my crying baby in the background, but it's possible. So I apologize. He's having a tough night.
As long as they can't hear my crying baby, it's okay.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna blame it and say it's Carter. I'm gonna say it.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, good 1A list. Take us through your top 10 for 2A.
All right, let's go 2A. 2A, we've got number 10, Ording. Number 9, Seaholm. Number 8, Ridgefield. Number 7, WF West. Number 6, Othello. Number 5, Linden. Number 4, Franklin Pierce. 3, Anacortes. 2, Archbishop Murphy. 1, Tumwater.
Man, we are really, really close here on this one. I went with Linden at 6, WF West at 5, Franklin Pierce at 4, Anacortes at 3, Archbishop at 2, and Tumwater at number 1. I'm going to pause real quick here because this is exactly what I was alluding to. So 77% of the vote that I put out there between Tumwater and Archbishop Murphy went to Tumwater here. I somehow 10% went to other. I don't know who the other is that anyone's got in mind here. I think it's pretty clear cut that, you know, Archbishop and Tumwater have got to be the only two to be considered for the top spot. So my biggest hurdle is that, hey, I'm not going to put Tumwater above Anacortes until Anacortes loses. Outside of that happening, Tumwater to me was definitively the number 1 team if in that scenario, even if Archbishop wins that game. A 6-point win at home, and Archbishop was, you know, widely considered a top 5 team going into that game anyway. Not too big of a shock. I mean, it's an upset, but it's not like, you know, it's not like Buster Douglas upsetting Mike Tyson or anything like that, you know. So I think that you got to give the working resume to the Tumwater Thunderbirds. They're next in line. They were the last team to play in the state championship against Anacortes. They haven't lost. They've scheduled tougher than anyone. Right. So they're taking on as many teams as they possibly can to pad up their resume. I think they're the biggest winner out of that game. And I think that they're going to end up playing WF West in week 9. And once that game is in the books, I think you're going to be looking at Tumwater as the number 1 overall seed.
Yep. 100% agreed. I did have a question reached out to me last week about hypothetically, if WF West wins over Tumwater, what does the computer think? And I said the computer likes Tumwater no matter what. I mean, yeah. I threw in the results, and the computer was still, you know, a quarter of a point for Tumwater above WF West there.
Well, I think we'll have to just look at the way the game is played out and what the final score would look like in that scenario. I mean, a 1-point win, hard to decipher, you know, 10-point win, easier to decipher. I think that regardless, if WF West wins that, I think it's going to come down to humans deciding to put WF West over them because of a head-to-head victory. I think that's been the most consistent logic that I've seen so far from the committees over the last few years, is that head-to-head wins are valued. And that's, you know, the toughest games to decipher are the games to where you've got 3-way ties where one team beat one team beat one team. Who are you going to value out of that? I think in that scenario, going with a computer formula is a little bit more beneficial. In this scenario, I think it's clear cut when it's just head to head. So, all right, 3A. I think I'll start us out here. Again, I was lazy and did 6 to stick with the theme of the show. So I went with Cedar Woolley at 6, Matt. I don't know, really. I dropped Roosevelt out of the top 6 here. Do I think that Roosevelt would be favored in a game over Cedar Woolley amongst pundits? I do. I ultimately do feel they would, but I'm not willing to punish Cedar Woolley for being undefeated at this point and beating some good teams along the way. They haven't beat world beaters or anything like that, but I like them. The Cubs at 6-0, that number 6, and then I got Lakes at 5, also undefeated at 6-0, having a really good season. Eastside Catholic at 4. Kennewick at 3, O'Day at 2, and Bellevue at number 1.
Yeah, I'm not sold on Cedar Woolley yet. I
understand.
They do have one good win. They have one win over a winning team right now, that being Oak Harbor. Everybody else is less than a third win percentage. So, you know, I'm hesitant to put them on there. I think that they're good. They're just hesitant to put them in there. And that's even the top 10.
Yeah.
So let's go. Speaking of that, number 10, Enumclaw. Number 9, Lincoln of Tacoma. Number 8, Decatur. Number 7, Lakes. Number 6, Monroe. Number 5, Roosevelt. Number 4, Eastside Catholic. Number 3, Kennewick. Number 2, O'Day. And number 1, Bellevue.
So we're at top 4 in agreement. Yeah, fluid after you get to that 5 mark. I was a little bit taken back by the fact that Monroe wasn't competitive. I would use that Roosevelt versus Camas game and that Monroe versus Camas game in the conversation room, in terms of seeding if they're all winning. I would look at that game and I would say to myself, Roosevelt with 2 losses better than Monroe with 1 loss so far, if that's how it finished this year. So, but just in terms of right now, excuse me, that's where I'm at. In terms of Cedro Woolley at 6, Lakes at 5, Eastside Catholic at 4. I think that Eastside Catholic is still in the conversation for a semifinalist, maybe even going to the finals. But they really got away with one this last week. I'll say that. They're very fortunate to only have the 1 loss still. So, but Bellevue and O'Day, I don't know if anything really gets in the way of that game from happening in the championship. I'd be really hard pressed to see if there's anybody that can knock either of those 2 teams off. And Bellevue, they got a game coming up this week, I think, against I want to say Eastlake. Is that who they got? Yeah, that'll be an interesting game. I'm excited to see how that game comes out.
I think that the biggest trip up for O'Day would be whoever gets 3. Is it going to be Kennewick? Kennewick's given O'Day some trouble the last few years. Is it going to be Eastside Catholic? It's going to be Roosevelt. Who knows? Maybe there's a miracle that happens and Monroe jumps up there or Lakes jumps up there. It's going to come up to, it's going to come down to that semifinal game. But yeah, I think that all roads lead to Bellevue O'Day for 3A state championship.
Yeah, I like your Decatur in there. I think Decatur has earned the respect of its peers, and they're not really under the radar at this point.
Yeah, in my opinion, they 5 4A team. Spoiler alert. So
yeah,
at this point you can't just look at the name and go Decatur. They're not a football program. They're 6-0 with a near 500 straight schedule.
Well, Coach Levesky's here kind of doubling down on what I was saying with Roosevelt. They're by far the most talented team they've played this year. And, coaches, athletic directors, they're going to take notice of Roosevelt's resume so far this year. It's not unthinkable that Roosevelt could end up having 3 losses, Matt. And if with that game against O'Day, boy, I tell you, I almost want to go into Lou Holtz mode right now and just feel like Roosevelt is the most dangerous 3-loss team in the history of the tournament. You got to watch out for Roosevelt. I think that they're going to be in the mix for beyond a quarterfinal appearance. They might be a spoiler semifinalist. So
exactly. Who knows? They get that 6 seed. Them and Kennewick matched up in the quarterfinals. That could be a heck of a game.
Ooh, here's one that one she broke. Ridgefield's the biggest frauds in 2A football. Well, I've seen them twice, and I wouldn't use the word fraud to describe them. Fresh would be another word that I would use that starts with F, because they've got over 100 players on that roster, and they have a next man up mentality. Guys will go in and step up. So I don't look at the game against Hawkinson, and I don't think Hawkinson's really bad, by the way. I think that might be the best winless team in the state. So they almost beat Woodland too. Woodland's defense is superb, and they put up 31 on Woodland's defense. So I'm not going to say that they're frauds. I will say that they've got their work cut out for them in terms of teams that they would play in the 2A playoffs. I appreciate the comments, though.
They've got a good win over Montesano too. That's not a slouch team right there.
No. I mean, yeah, just ask Justin Domashevitz, and Montesano is super good. La Center bus rolled Montesano 35-7. I think that was a big wake-up call for the Bulldogs, honestly, because they came in and they had the lead against Ridgefield, and a lot to be determined. I'll say that. I think that I wouldn't say they're frauds. I would just say that there are opportunities for them to still get better. I'm telling you what, they won by 19 against Mark Morris, and they were +4 or +5 in the turnover margin. That could easily be a 30, 40-point win, if you're capitalizing on all of those opportunities. Mark Morris played them super good, though. If you take away all the turnovers that Mark Morris had, they had a chance to win that game. Mark Morris is a lot better than teams really realize, or fans realize as well. I think that Coach Mike Beck's got a team that no one's going to want to play if they're into the playoffs, and that Mark Morris plays Hawkinson this week. Anything can happen. So, all right, we kind of got derailed a little bit, but hey guys, again, type into the comment section. I love the back and forth. I love the comments, and I don't care if you like a team or hate a team. I like to talk about it. So 4A, let's move into it. Matt, I think that I started out for 3A, so I'll have you start out for 4A here.
Sounds good. So we're going number 10, Arlington, number 9, Eastlake, number 8, Yelm, number 7, Graham Kapowson, number 6, Gonzaga Prep, number 5, Skyview, number 4, Kennedy Catholic, number 3, Lake Stevens, number 2, Tumwater, oh my gosh, number 2, Sumner. Holy crap. Tumwater would be 8th in 4A. And then number 1, Campus.
Yeah, I love it. I went with at 6, Chiawana, 5-1. And then I went Gonzaga Prep at 5, Kennedy Catholic at 4, Lake Stevens at 3, Sumner at 2, and Camas at 1, 6-0. I think Skyview could work themselves back into the conversation of being a top 6 team when they're fully healthy. I mean, fully healthy. Their quarterback's still kind of nursing an ankle injury or foot injury of some kind, but having 2 losses at this point, I know I have Lake Stevens at 2 losses, but come on, those are against 2 of the toughest teams you're going to find in Bellevue and Sumner. So that's kind of where I'm coming from here. I think Skyview's fringe with 6, but I mean, I kind of went back and forth here. You got Arlington undefeated. I know that maybe that Arlington doesn't have the strongest schedule up to this point here, Matt, but they're still a decent team and undefeated. Then you've also got Meade in the conversation. You got Moses Lake in the conversation. I think that, and then Richland to me is a team I think that can beat just about anybody. I think the 4A top to bottom is very competitive. I think 1 through 10, there's really not a lot separating these teams. I know Coach Levesky's here from Camas, and he's always pretty honest, it seems. I think that he would tell you that they got their work cut out for them, that there's a lot of really good teams in 4A.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that 4A is going to produce the most amount of upsets in the round 32 and the round of 16, because you'd look at that mid-pack and there's just so many great teams there. Like even in my top 10, I didn't mention Glacier Peak, Meade, Chiawana, Richland, Kamaikan, Curtis, Skyline, Moses Lake, Eastmont, Emerald Ridge is having a pretty solid season.
The Jags,
Curtis, so, I mean, Bethel, exactly. There's so many really good teams there that I could see multiple upsets in week 10 and round of 16.
Maybe even in Eastmont, who knows at this point. There could be a lot of teams that really give everybody a run for their money. There's really not. But Caleb Reed for Arlington just broke the single-season rushing touchdown record with 18, the best running back that nobody is talking about, says Marcus Ellis.
We're talking about him now. Go, Caleb. Let's go.
Yeah. So only you get credit here for the 4A from Auntie M, says that your 4A is on the – yeah, spot on. Thanks, Big Matt. So I don't know why Big has to be in front of it, but heavens.
That's okay.
But Matt, yeah, that's all good. And then Brian said that he watched the Ridgefield Mark Morris game. Great job. And that was it 17-12 in the fourth quarter. It was. And Mark Morris had the ball down 5 and threw a ball towards the end zone, and it was picked off. Ridgefield has really opportunistic corners, and their safeties are really smart. They kind of will shade to different sides and give different looks. But, yeah, it was a tough game for Ridgefield if you're looking at it from that standpoint. Like I said, Mark Morris is not going to be an easy out for a team that's played Seton Catholic and Kelso in non-league, and then played at Washougal, moved the ball, and played Ridgefields. Turned the ball over 6 times against them and still had a chance to win the game. I think if they clean some stuff up, I think they're real dangerous. But Coach Levesque also says correct 4A is wide open. Yeah, I really do feel that that's the most wide open of the classifications right now, because we could get a double-digit seed, in the semifinal round or beyond even. That run that Mount Baker had a couple of years ago, I think is an 11 seed in 1A. That could happen this year in 4A. I don't know who it's going to be, but somebody's going to be tremendously undervalued, and they're going to upset a couple teams along the way.
Absolutely. It's going to be so much fun to watch that bracket. And I think the 1A bracket's going to be fun too, despite it being 12. In all honesty, like I'm looking at all of them. Like it's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun. The pickups this year are going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, we got to get the office pool going and figure it out. I know you did the basketball one last year, which by the way, I did really good in one of those brackets, but
I did
not so
terrible.
Good. Yeah, I did not so good.
It was the last year, in all honesty, was the worst that the computer had done at the basketball state tournament. It was so bad.
The computer is awesome, though. I love the computer.
The computer's pretty awesome, but yeah, he did not, or he should not do well last year during that basketball tournament. I want to say I did we did an unofficial competition between me and SB Live, and I got smoked. I think after the afternoon session of day 2, I was just like, "Yep, we're done."
Yeah, no. If the computer's not picking Linden, then something's wrong.
Yeah, the computer knows better than to pick against Linden basketball.
I think they should, at least. Which, by the way, I know I'm getting ahead of myself and a little off topic here, but I recently put out my 2A top 10 for boys, and I got Linden starting out at number 2, right behind the Grandview Greyhounds, and it'd be real interesting to see. Yeah, it'd be real interesting to see how this season turns out. I think that Linden's going to be one of those teams that probably loses a couple of games early in the year. Maybe some non-conference games are going to schedule tough, but they still got Brant Hepner coming back to lead the team, and they still got a really big front court. And obviously, they're still Linden. They're still coached by Brian Roper, so it's going to be. And Grandview's only losing, Armandaris, the older Armandaris, really is kind of the only guy that's leaving their team, and they're a little undersized. They're scrappy, but they pressure the ball really well, and they get out and run really well. I think the Greyhounds are primed for a good season. I'm really excited for 2A boys basketball. I saw the non-league schedule and the regular season schedule for Seton Catholic earlier today.
Yeah,
super excited to see them.
I was going to mention that one. December 14th against Annie Wright. Oh, that's going to be a great game.
Yeah, I mean, don't sleep on the games that they've got opening up the year at RA Long. That is going to be a very tough game for Seton Catholic. And then they also play at Columbia River. That'll be another really tough game. Seton Catholic winning those games puts a lot of credibility on your resume. Even if they lose those games, it could cause a team to overlook them, and think, oh, they got 3 or 4 losses this year. Well, it won't be because they stubbed their toe. It's going to be because they played some really good teams. I think that Annie Wright Seton Catholic game might be a state championship preview.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I would agree with you there. How about this one? December 28th, Sundome Shootout, Grandview Bremerton.
Oh, yeah, that's going to be a fantastic game. Oh, yeah. The Grandview Shootout is one of the best events. The Yakima Sundome Shootout is one of the best events that they have over the holiday season. And
oh my gosh, I just saw another one. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just saw another one.
Please.
So here you go. This is a double header, okay? We're talking Court 1, Yakima Sundome, okay? So the second game is Grandview Bremerton, okay? The game just preceding that, Linden Annie Wright.
Oh, yeah.
Shut up and take my money.
Yeah, Annie Wright is ready to go to war right now with anybody with who they're scheduling, they're going to be playing a bunch of tough teams this year, and I'm excited for that game right now. Just from you saying that, I mean Bremerton and Grandview. You want to talk about a team that both of them like to get out and run, and both of them have got really, really good players. And Marcelino Armandaris for Grandview, and then you've got Jalen Davis, the star of the tournament last year. He'll be a sophomore this year for Bremerton. Bremerton's more than just Jalen Davis, and as is Grandview without Armandaris. Grandview's got a couple of really good players. They got Cameron Draculin as well, who's a good player. Medina, their guard, super good. They all go to the same barber though. Grandview and Prosser, they all have the same barber. They all got that Will from Stranger Things haircut going. It's pretty cool. I don't know where they go for it, but it's pretty sick.
Man, if you haven't looked at have you seen Annie Wright's boys schedule?
It's insane, but it's been a while since I looked at it. But
I've got it pulled up right here. Let's just look at their non-league. Okay, they're opening the season at Rainier Beach.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I mean, right there. They're hosting a school from Canada. Their next non-league, they play at Bellarmine. Then they have Seton Catholic. And then they go down to Sundome. They play Zilla Linden back to back. Silas right after that. Then they go at Stadium in January 30th at Bremerton, and then February 1st at Bellevue. Like,
yikes!
Like, come on, that strength of schedule is going to be so good. Oh my gosh!
That that game you mentioned there against Zilla. I'm interested to see how the Leopards bounce back this year. They still got Decker Vandergraaf, but they're losing 5 seniors to go, after their state championship win this last year against Annie Wright. I didn't think that was going to be the case. I thought Annie Wright was going to win that game. I was watching it. I got a chance to interview Decker right after the game, and he hit the game-winning shot, and it was on a simple play. He missed the 3, but he followed his own shot, and he grabbed the ball out of the air, took one land, and just went right back up and scored the game-winning bucket. I mean, that was as thrilling of a finish as I've seen at the championship level, other than the girls' game that I called with Linden against Ellensburg when the streak finally came to an end. That was crazy. But man, that Annie Wright schedule, that's brutal. I mean, if they lose 4 games in that schedule, I wouldn't be surprised, but I think that they're going to be better off for it. I think them and Seton Catholic, I would say it right now, I think they're both going to be better off for the games that they're scheduling. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I like it here that shout out to Brian for commenting on YouTube about basketball. Says Fort Vancouver athletic director James Ensley is now the Battleground head coach. That's a big pickup. James is a great dude, and Fort Vancouver was awesome with him, so that's going to be a great pickup for those guys. That makes me wonder about if Battleground still has Tate Spencer coming back in his senior year, because I know his brother went to go play prep school last year, but baseball stud James Gill will have a breakout basketball season. I know we're sidetracked here talking basketball, but when schedules are released for basketball, this is what you get, right? This is what you get. You get basketball. Blazers, let's go. I'm getting pumped up for basketball right now just talking about it. I tell you what, I can't wait to see Ari Long this year. Ari Long is going to have something for everybody. I have a feeling they're going to be tough. Mark Morris is going to be tough. Columbia River is going to be tough. I get spoiled down here in the District 4 2A for basketball. There's going to be, that Bremerton team that's a sleeping giant. Ari Long had the lead on with 2 minutes to go last year in the round of 16, and Ari Long's gotten better. I'll tell you that much. All right. Let's close this baby out here in a little bit, Matt. Let's go through some games and let's pick 6 this week. Let's see. I'm starting to get a little stuffy here, unfortunately, but I was perusing earlier today, looking for some games, and I kind of wanted to see if we can maybe find some that are a little bit tougher to pick. I don't want to cherry pick some games that I think that are just between good teams on paper, but where there's a clear and obvious winner. Mm-hmm. But let's take a look here and let's see what we got. I'm going through some. You got anything on the top of your mind that you wanted to go through and pick this week?
Well, oh man, there's so many good ones. If I was picking one, I'd want to go Chiawana Kennewick.
Yeah, I saw that one. Yeah, that one's going to be. Is it at Chiawana?
It is at. I think it's at Chiawana. Let's see. Kamaikan. I think Kamaikan's at home against Pasco. So yeah, that one should be. I'll double check that real quick.
Okay, let's do it. Let's check that one real quick here. You also got Goldendale at Clay Elum Roslyn this week.
Yeah, that game's at Edgar Brown.
I'm not familiar with Edgar Brown.
Oh, sorry, at Chiawana. Yeah, at Chiawana.
Okay, good deal. Sorry, you'll have to forgive me.
Oh, no, it's okay. I just assume that everybody knows everything about the Tri-City Stadium. So
yeah, I know Edgar Martinez. Yeah, let's get into that one real quick. I'll continue to peruse here, but on the surface, I'll tell you this much: I think that I'm more impressed so far with Kennewick than I am with Chiawana. But Chiawana's won 5 straight, after losing their opener this year. I'm going to give the home team a nod in this one, and I'm going to go Riverhawks, which is Chiawana, by the way. And I'm seeing like a 20-17 type game, something real close and tight.
Yeah, this game is going to be an extremely physical game. And the biggest thing, too, for Chiawana is that, honestly, this game doesn't really mean anything since Kennewick's 3A doesn't have an effect on playoffs team. And next week, Chiawana's got Richland. So, they're going to come out and they're going to play tough, but this game, in the grand scheme of things, really doesn't mean anything for playoff seeding. That being said, I think that it's going to come down to who is the more physical team, and I think that Kennewick is the more physical team. So I would go Kennewick by 7-10.
Okay, I like it. So we're split on the first game. That's a good sign. I like it.
Yeah.
What do you think about the Big 9 battle between Eastmont and Moses Lake? You think that's a game worth picking, or is it too easy for us just to both go Moses Lake in that one?
I think that Moses Lake is probably the clear favorite, but Eastmont is they're a good team. They know how to win. They've won a lot recently. That game is, I don't remember if that's in East Wenatchee or if that one's in Moses Lake. Look that one up real quick. Moses, let's see.
That one's at Moses Lake.
That was at Moses Lake. Oh, okay. I'd probably got Moses Lake in that one.
Yeah. Let's leave that one off the pick six radar here. I'm gonna go to one here that it doesn't look sexy on records, but Mount Si at Bothell. Both teams 2-4, both teams needing a win. That's going to be a desperate game right there in the Kingco 4A.
Yeah, I would go Bothell in that game. I really like what I've seen from the Cougars so far. Yeah, the record doesn't really reflect what I think that they've shown, but they've played just a gauntlet of teams. I mean, their strength of schedule is the highest in 4A. They're at like a 762 opponent schedule. So I mean, they've really gone through the ringer this year. But I think that they are better for it, and I'd lean Bothell in that one.
Yeah, I like Bothell in that one as well. They had a real high scoring game earlier in the season. That was a loss, I want to say, to Arlington, 50-49. Yeah. And with Arlington being 6-0 playing Wesco, I feel that that's a good loss for Bothell, and they're typically a team that doesn't give up 50 points in a game. And having a 2-4 record, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're out of it by any stretch at this point. So in a must-win situation, I'll take the home team. I'll take the Bothell Cougars as well. So
yeah, and you got to think too. Their other non-league game was a 16-point loss to Kennedy.
Yeah, Yeah, which is a good team as well. Another 6-0 team.
No,
Yeah, I mean, I think that there could be a team that's super dangerous if they can just get into the playoffs. You never know what could happen there. Let's go to this game here in 2A that's between North Kitsap and Bainbridge. North Kitsap's really trying to work themselves back into contention for a league championship. They need a couple of things to go their way to do it. They're 3-3, and Bainbridge has had a pretty good season so far, 5-1. Their only loss was a massive one to Tumwater here. But you got a team that's trying to become a league champion against a team that's been, I think, the league champs for at least 3 straight years in North Kitsap. I think that this one's actually a tough game to call here, Matt. I kind of want to go with who's been doing it more recently in North Kitsap. But I think that the Bainbridge Islanders here, I think they're the Crusaders. I think that they're going to get the win here in this one.
I think that I'm going with who I think is
Spartans, by the way, Bainbridge Spartans.
Yeah, Spartans. I think that I'm going to go with a team that I think they have the pedigree. I think that, while they may have been struggling at the beginning of the season, I think they're kind of hitting at the right time. I'm going to go with North Kitsap.
Yeah, I'm tempted to actually agree with you in that regard, but I like to see teams that, kind of come out. I'm not saying coming out of nowhere. Bainbridge had a good start to last season, but when these two teams played last year, Bainbridge was undefeated. It was an earlier game in the schedule, and North Kitsap just put the wood to them. I like to think that Bainbridge has learned a little bit since that game, and they're going to do what's necessary to take the next step. All right, let's go to a game that I think that we'll both probably pick this team, but I think it's a game that we should still have on the pick 6 here. Bellevue at Eastlake. I think that this is a big test here actually for both teams, being that Bellevue's playing the pod schedule now and playing in the 4A group. They're probably going to get a look at the best team that's from the Kinko 4A outside of Bellevue. So I'm curious about this one. What say you first on this game?
I think that I'm going Bellevue. They're a 3A team, but they're probably a top 5 team in the state. I think that until they lose, you got to go with them.
I'm with you on picking Bellevue. I do think it'll be a little bit closer, though, than what some might think. I think that this is going to depend on the health of Eastlake overall. If they've got their 11 guys out there ready to go, ready to play, I think that they could beat just about anybody and, any given Friday.
Well, and if you go like common opponent and stuff, which I know you never use that for picking games. Bellevue beat Mount Si by 34. Eastlake beat them by 21, and then Bellevue beat Skyline by 35, and Eastlake beat Skyline by 17. So if you're looking at transitive property there, I'm probably Bellevue by 17 to 20.
Yeah, no, I like transitive properties. It's a good one for sure. I kind of wanted to pick this Washougal and RA Long game. 2 teams 3-3. And it's been kind of a conundrum again this year with the Greater St. Helens League. RA Long is 2-1 in league play, or 2-2 in league play. 2-2, yeah. And then Washougal also 2-2. This is going to be a real close game. And I don't know which team is going to play better in the elements because, neither one of them really rely too heavily on the run game. I'm thinking it's homecoming for RA Long here in this one, and they've been on the road a couple of times the last few weeks. I don't think a lot of people are expecting much out of the Lumberjacks, but I'm going to pick them. I think that they can beat Washougal here this week.
I'm going to slide with the computer in this one, and I'm going to go with Washougal.
How bad is it? What does the computer say?
Computer has a 0.05, which it's not like too big of a margin. It's not close, but it's it's relatively like, I don't know, 10 points or so.
Nice. We'll have to circle back and see what the computer is able to come up with in that one, because I like that. I think it's a good game. I like games that are kind of closer more than anything else. Did you have anything any other games that you were looking at? I don't want to be rude and
Oh, you're fine. You're
just.
not. You're definitely not rude. Let me take a look real quick. See if there's anything that kind of
I've got a
hits
couple
your
contenders.
wrench. What do you got? Let's discuss. What do you got?
Well, I'm looking at this East Valley at Sela, 2 4-2 teams in the CWAC right now. I'm looking at that game. I'm looking at Meridian at Nooksack Valley, although I feel Nooksack is kind of heavy favorite there. I'm also looking at that Mount Baker at Linden Christian game. I think that game is pretty important. 3-2 at 3-3. Those are just a couple that I'm looking at right away. I was also looking at Evergreen at Prairie. Talked about that one. And then Gonzaga Prep at Central Valley. Let's see. Odessa at Wilbur Crescent Keller.
Yeah, that'd be a good one. I don't know. I mean, you can't really go wrong. There's lots of, I mean, you can even throw. Oh, we already talked about like Eastmont. Oh my gosh.
Arlington at Glacier Peak. Let's do that.
I'm down with that. Yep, let's do it.
Yeah, Arlington comes in undefeated, 6-0. Glacier Peak 5-1. The games at Glacier Peak. I think this is going to be, other than Bothell, I think this is going to be by far the toughest game that Arlington has played so far this week. I'm sure that this one's going to be streamed this week by STSPN, so I'll be looking for that and looking for their link in this one. But I like Glacier Peak here in this one.
I was doing some research for this game since we clearly decided this hours ago, and I think that this game is really going to whoever can own the game on the ground, I think is going to win this game. And Arlington has this kid. He's the best running back that nobody is talking about. His name is Caleb Reed. He just broke the single season rushing touchdown record with 18. I mean, nobody's talking about this guy. So yeah, I think I'm going to lean into the swerve here, and I'm going with Arlington based on my boy Caleb Reed.
Yeah, Marcus Ellis coming in clutch. Yeah, breaking news during the show. I love it. That's a game though that's going to be important. Assuming Lake Stevens is able to take care of business throughout the rest of the season, that game could loom large as to who's second place out of Westco.
Yeah, and Westco number 2 is probably going to be a 9-13 seed. Maybe Glacier Peak, maybe who the third, depending on who the third seed is. Maybe they're fighting for one of those last home games in week 10.
Well, this is the time of year to where everybody is officially in league play now. This week signifies that the last leagues that have not been in league play, by the way, on DM loves you and your Arlington pick. But yeah, the Greater St. Helens League, they are now finally into league play. And then out of the 1B rankings, that one league with Elmira Cooley Heartline, Wilbur Crescent Keller, they're now finally into league play.
And the Caribou Trail is finally
in the Caribou Trail. Yep, with OMAC and them. Yep. So yeah, everyone's officially here, right? So now we're going to start to see some records. Kind of, you're going to see some losses. Put it that way. You're going to see some teams that have had good non-league schedules, good non-league wins, and they're going to kind of start to beat each other up here. And I saw an earlier comment. I'm scrolling. Trey Jenkins for president 2020. Nope, that wasn't it. Oh, from Coey Jupes. Normally, Kinko performs really well in the tournament. I'm really skeptical that this happens this year. That happens this year. You still got plenty of quality teams up there outside of Bellevue.
Yeah, the thing that's going to be really interesting is going to be Kinko and their seedings, because Bellevue's going to go off to 3A, and that's going to leave you with probably Eastlake at 5 wins, 6 wins. Maybe there's 1 or 2 more that have 4 wins, maybe a 5 win. So how is the committee going to really separate these teams? Like, they're going to have to really look at what they what they bring to the table, because I don't think that I think if let's say Bothell goes through, Bothell beats Mount Si. Who do they play week 8? They play Eastlake Mount 8, so that would be a good one. But let's say Bothell goes 5-4 with the tough the strength of schedule that they've had, what are you going to do? Are you going to drop them, put them on the road despite having such a great schedule with some solid results on there? So that's going to be I think that Kinko is they're going to win games, but it's not going to be as easy as it has been the last few years when they've crossed over with like the SPSL or the not SPSL but the NPSL and those guys.
Yep. Well, everybody's kind of on equal footing, even ground right now, in terms of who's going to have a chance to play some games that are a little bit more favorable. It's not just, that's one thing I like about no crossovers, no set crossovers, at least anymore, is that you're going to get some diversity. Mm-hmm. Let's also keep West Valley Spokane on upset alert this week with Deer Park. They're playing at Deer Park. Sumner at Curtis, 5-1, 4-2. Curtis, sneaky good. You also have Graham Kapowson at Olympia. That'll be a solid game. And then, you got to watch out with Battleground and Camas. That'll be a tough matchup down in Greater St. Helens League 4A this year. And we mentioned it, Odessa, Wilbur-Crest, and Keller, 2 undefeated teams going at it this week. A lot of really good games. And, week 7 has a tendency to be a separator week, in terms of playoff berth or no playoff berth. I think a lot of teams are going to look back at the teams that they played this week, and they're going to either be very excited and very happy with their results, and this is why we got ourselves a playoff spot, or they're going to be remembering how they stubbed their toe and they missed out on an opportunity.
Yeah, I've got one last thing to keep an eye on as we're getting into seeding here. If you look at Kinko, going back to Kinko, Tier C, you've got an undefeated 6-0 Mercer Island 3A. They've got two very winnable games coming up with Redmond and Inglemore. And then you look at Tier D, you've got a 6-0 Interlake with Cedar Crest and Foster coming up, both very winnable games. So, committee, you've got, let's say an undefeated Mercer Island and an undefeated Interlake make it in. What are we doing? How are we gonna, you factor in the tier factor there? It's gonna be interesting to see that there's a lot of really interesting things. I'm excited. This is the first week that the committees will put in their 1 through 32s. They'll start kind of see who they're looking for, and this is the fun time of year.
Yeah, you bring up a really interesting team there in Mercer Island. It's one thing to be undefeated and potentially go 9-0, have a perfect record. But I think that when you're introducing pods, it either really helps you or it really hurts you. And I think that this is one of the cases that's going to really hurt Mercer Island. I don't think that if you're sitting in a room with everybody and you're talking about, them versus let's use Roosevelt, right? A 3-loss Roosevelt. I mean, Are you really thinking around that table that Roosevelt might not be a better team if you look at the competition and you look at the metrics of who they've played so far this year? Yeah, they played an Annie Wright, schedule of basketball essentially, but in football. Whereas Mercer Island, they do mix with a couple 4A schools, right? But they also mix with some 2A schools and non-league. And the 3A schools that they play aren't necessarily high metric either. I think it's going to be a real tough scenario for Mercer Island to get the backing. Like, let's say that they're up against a 2-loss Decatur or a 2-loss, 3-loss Lincoln of Tacoma. There's some real conversations that are going to take place here on whether or not they're more deserving, even with an undefeated 9-0 record. And I think that's what makes this really hard. The only scenario that's really good for Mercer Island is, let's say that they maybe get a little disrespected in terms of where they're going to be in the crossovers, and they get a matchup against a team that is kind of in that pod, in that tier, and they go out and they throttle them, or they win by a comfortable margin, 2-3 scores. That's a good proving ground for them when they get reseeded for the round of 16. Going into that, though, I don't know how favorable it's going to be for the Islanders.
Yeah, I don't think it will be. I really don't. Yeah. I think they'll, if you're going league champion, I mean, it's a third tier. I think that they're going to have to go on the road despite being possibly undefeated. But that's if they get through week 9 to begin with. I mean, there's no promise that they're going to be able to do that anyway.
Yeah, no. Yeah, there's a lot of storylines to keep your eye on in terms of where you think teams are at. 6-0 is good, but they did beat Renton 70-0. But Renton's a 2-4 2A school. What do you look at more? You look at 70 points, or do you look at the opponent's record that you just beat? So it'll be interesting. Either way, they don't have a tremendously tough schedule the rest of the way. They've got Inglemoor coming up this week. That's 2-4. And then they're going to play Redmond, who's 0-6. So, yeah, it's going to be tough. All right. Well, that's all I got, Matt. I think we're about spent here.
Yeah, I think that's all I got as well.
Well, I'll tell you this much. I had a great time getting back together with you and talking some high school football here tonight.
Man.
And we had a great audience in the chat tonight, giving some good pointers, good feedback. And Brian's here with a late comment, says Roosevelt's good enough to win 3A. And yeah, I mean, I'm not willing to say that that's untrue. I think that they've proven that they're a very difficult team for anybody to handle. That game against O'Day that they have is going to be another very telling game in terms of how it plays out. And, we'll wait and see a little bit. I think that there's a few teams in 3A that can win some games and make some noise. And you know what? We almost went an entire show without mentioning Yelm until now. I just figured I'd mention them, but they're another team in the 4A that, needs to be
mentioned them number 8 in my rankings.
Okay, that too. All right. Well, I didn't mention, which is like a record because.
I was gonna say, I mean, the folks in Yelm nearly had a collective heart attack right now.
Yeah, no, exactly, as they should. There's a lot to be decided in every single league still, it seems, and there's a couple that are sewn up, but for the most part, everything's wide open right now. It's the season, and this is the week, right? There's going to be rain in the forecast this week. There's going to be sloppy games out there. It's going to be old school big boy football out here. Teams that can run the ball and control the line of scrimmage are probably going to rule the roost this weekend, Matt, and I'm really excited to see it play out.
Oh, me too. Me too. Let's go.
All right, guys. Big boy football. Let's do it. All right, so I'll be Friday night, 7 o'clock, hosting the live stream for Washougal and RA Long. It should be a competitive game. I'm very excited. And, I'm going to be keeping up on Twitter throughout the game, and I'm excited to see what we got in terms of scores and upsets. What's going on with the Seahawks? They're losing. Yeah, they're too injured right now. There's not. Yeah, I mean, I think that they're good, but only when healthy. And right now they're not healthy. The big Byron Murphy's the big guy they got to get back. They were 3-0 with him in the lineup. They were 40 yards better in terms of giving up yards on the ground in the run game. So until that improves, they're probably not winning another game unless Kirk Cousins in primetime shows up. Then they have a chance. But they're not playing primetime. They're playing at 10 o'clock. So yeah.
And the Huskies have a bye, so we can just take some time and just drink heavily, and then get ready for Indiana at 9 a.m. next week.
Does Oregon have a bye? Did Dan Lanning plan that too?
I don't know, but whatever it is, he's going to be putting 12 players on the field at big times. Which, by the way, say what you will about the guy, ballsy play call.
Yeah,
I mean, I didn't watch it live, but hearing about it afterwards, I was just like, man, that's brilliant. Say what you will about him, but brilliant call.
Okay, well, it's only brilliant if that happens to where it's an incomplete pass, because I believe if they get 7 yards, they can add that 5 yards to that 7 yards gained on that penalty and turn it into a 12-yard gain. Can they not?
I'm not sure about that on that call, because I think that's only on like a personal foul, possibly.
Well, I don't have my rule book in front of me, but I thought that
they would have had to either taken the yards or taken the play in that case. But I think on a personal foul, I think they can add the 15.
it used to be a personal foul, though. It used to be a 15-yard penalty to have 12 out of a timeout. It happened to Washington when Rick Neuheisel was the coach and they played Michigan. They came out of a timeout with 12 and it was a 15-yard penalty. Of course, that was 20 years ago.
That was the Stone Age. So
yeah, exactly. So, all right. Yeah, glad the Huskies are off because that was abysmal to watch. And I thought Iowa was going to win the game, but in a much closer margin. That was just demoralizing. So,
yeah, I flipped to college football 25 really, really quickly after that one started.
Yeah. You didn't break a player's back or anything, did you?
No. Not this time. Not this time.
In a career.
He's good. My boy's good.
Good deal. All right. Well, speaking of boys, I'm going to go check on mine and get everybody off the bed here tonight. And thank you guys so much for being with us. And hopefully we'll be able to come back tomorrow night.
There's Carter for you guys.
Yeah.
Meg Wapnick, that's for you.
Yeah, the Carter demand has been fulfilled. Yeah. So I guarantee we're going to have him on the show again at some point here.
Absolutely.
So yeah, he was probably the most popular host that we've had so far. So
ratings went through the roof. There
ratings
were 50,000 people. Our crowd sizes were huge during that one.
People were talking to Carter in the shopping center. They're like, "I saw you on YouTube, Carter," and he's just like,
he went, "Dada."
Yeah, exactly. All right, guys. Well, I'm Nick, and that's Matt, and we are signing off here tonight. Come on back next week for another episode of Pick Six, and we hope to see you then.